Good Sabbath to you all. Beautiful morning, beautiful day. It is good to be with you. This is Bill, and these are our meditations on the Torah. These are our meditations for the Sabbath of Kedoshim, Parsha number 30 of the Great Torah Cycle. The Great Torah Cycle is something that we enjoy, we take delight in, and we find our hope and our guidance from the Holy One in. And this particular parsha, this section of the Torah, is actually only 2 chapters. It's only 64 verses. It runs from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1, all the way through Leviticus 20, verse 27. So 64 verses. And it comes to us right in the middle of the cycle, right even in the season of counting the Omer. It always comes to us at this kind of time of the year. And it's central to the theme of the Torah. We'll talk more about that as we go. I hope that you will be caught up in its beauty, its majesty, and in the drawing, the pulling it has upon your life. I want to tell you that my theme for this parsha, as I will teach it, as the Holy One has given to me, the theme is beautiful people arise. Beautiful people arise. And yes, I am speaking to you. Now, I'm going to tell a story. And the story, I heard it from the recordings of Shlomo Carlebach. And so I won't tell it near as beautifully, as poignantly as he is. I'm not near as gifted a storyteller as he. But the story is powerful in itself, and I will pray that the telling of the story will awaken in you what it awoke in me, and why I call this beautiful people arise, this parsha. Well, the story begins at Auschwitz. We have had a time this week when we remembered the Holocaust. We remembered the trauma of what took place over the times of the Holocaust season. We have that memory ingrained in our spirits and our souls. But this story started at Auschwitz, and toward the end of the season, whenever the Allied forces were coming near, particularly the Russian armies were coming near, and there was this sense that there was a possible restoration, a possible rescue. There was one of the men who had survived the trauma, the tragedy, the degradation, the abuse, the hatred at Auschwitz. And he was waiting patiently for the Russians to come, for the Allied armies to come and rescue his fellows and himself from Auschwitz. And the Germans had begun to pack up and leave, and they were not causing as much hassle anymore. And so one time the man walks out the front of the door. He actually could get out on his own without being told and ordered where to go. And he comes out the door of his men's encampment bunker at Auschwitz. And he comes out and stands in the yard and wants to hear the sound of the Russian armies coming to set them free, to rescue them, as he had dreamed. And across the yard, across the complex at Auschwitz, he sees out of the women's bunker comes a woman he recognizes from a distance, just from a distance. He can see her, and he knows instinctively, though he has not seen her in years, this is his bride. She has also survived. The joy that filled his heart, knowing that his bride had also survived. And he couldn't see her face. All he could see was the way she moved, and the way she held her body, and the way she held herself, and the way she looked in his direction, hoping that her husband was indeed there. And she comes out and she looks, and they can just yell across the yard. And now there's no one standing over them to prevent them from doing so. And he says, "Meet me. If the Russians come, meet me at the house, at the mansion, right next door, across the way, the nearest mansion. And I will meet you in the dining room." Well, he had seen this mansion when he came into the camp. And so it's she. And so she waves, and then the Russians come. And as the Russians come, he runs as fast as he's freed, as fast as he can, as fast as his broken body will allow him to do. He runs to this place where he expected to see this mansion, and it's basically destroyed. It has been, the war has done its toll on the mansion, and all that's left standing is the dining room that he mentioned. And in this dining room, there is a mirror. He runs into the rubble, and he finds this one room that's standing, the dining room. And in this dining room, he sees a mirror on the wall. This is the first time he has seen a mirror, or seen his reflection in a mirror, in years, since he's been at the internment camp, at the work camp, at the death camp. And he looks into the mirror, and he's shocked by what he sees. He's totally emaciated. He's a shell of the man that he was when he came in. He's broken. His facial features are distorted. His skin is wrinkled and pockmarked. His body is thin, and it looks like it's half dead. And he's missing teeth from being beaten. He's not the man that he was. He sees and he's shocked. Oh no, he doesn't know if he doesn't want to see his bride. He doesn't want her to see him this way. And all of a sudden, through the rubble, he hears the sound of footsteps, and he recognizes the sound of the footsteps. And the footsteps come into the dining room. It's the last thing standing in this mansion. And the woman's eyes do not hit him first. They see the mirror and his wife, the beautiful wife that he knew in her youth, is now like him, emaciated and broken, bruised, teeth missing, facial features distorted, in all ways lacking any of the youth or the vigor or the life that she had. And she looks at me, looks at him, looks at the man, and they look at one another, and each one asks the other, are you my husband? Are you my wife? And they realize they are. And then the husband says, do you love me? How can you love me? How could you possibly love me? I'm so ugly. I'm so unlovable. I'm so terrible. She says, no, you're beautiful to me. To me, you're beautiful. And she says, but you can't love me. I mean, I'm so ugly. I'm so broken. I'm so much a death shell. You can't love me? And he says, oh, you're the most beautiful, the most wonderful, the most lovely, beautiful woman I have ever seen. You're more beautiful than you ever were, even in the days of our youth. You are so beautiful to me. Well, now you understand about beauty arising. And what happened was, as Shlomo tells the stories, they survived. They moved together. They reunited. They came together. They moved to a new land, a new country. They built a home. They had a family. They had children, and they raised those children. And they knew the memory. They had the memory of how horrible human beings could be to one another. And they knew the risks that were out there in the world and how hard the world could be. But they taught their children to be beautiful people, to stay faithful, trusting in the Holy One, that he would bring good things to pass. Well, when I say beautiful people arise, I don't mean that you have to put on makeup and you need to look as you're on your best day. When I say beautiful people arise, and when the Torah speaks things that cause me to make this my theme in chapters 19 and 20 of Leviticus, I want you to know that beauty comes forth Beauty comes forth out of the heart of death, out of the heart of dying, out of the heart of persecution and anguish. So wherever you are, whatever you have experienced in life, whatever traumas have been inflicted upon your life, I speak into your soul. I speak to you. You're beautiful. You have been created to be beautiful. You are the most beautiful person you could ever be, and you are becoming more and more beautiful. Come, arise, beautiful people, arise. Now, in the Torah, in the portion, we'll talk about a beauty arising. And it will take forms. It will take the form of holiness. We'll talk about holiness. Kedoshim means holy ones, ones of holiness, ones who are infused with Kedusha, the holiness factor, and therefore begin to operate in that process. We'll talk about tiferet, or beauty. The idea of beauty in Hebrew is not some concept of luscious attractiveness in the physical sense. Beauty in the Hebrew realm, in the words of tiferet, which is what we translate as beauty. Beauty is a perfect balance between understanding what humanity deserves and how broken it is, and how each one of us is broken in our ways and dangerous and toxic in our ways. But balancing that off with understanding of the potential that was placed into us, each uniquely, collectively, all in all ways by our Creator, and being patient and balanced, patient with the evil that we see, because we trust in the good that we know exists. So the beauty, we have the holiness, we have the beauty, and then we have the third factor, which is the star of Kedoshim, Parsha Kedoshim, these chapters, and that is love, divine love, love that is atmosphere shifting, transformative, love that is kingdom of heaven centered. And I want you to get those thoughts. Kingdom of us, the Holy One wants to come and take us, and like vessels, or like soil, like mud, to put us on his potter's wheel. And wherever we are and whatever we've experienced and whatever brokenness is in us, to take us and put us on his potter's wheel, and with his own hands begin to mold and shape us. Put us on that wheel and shape us into vessels of Kedusha, of holiness, and conduits of atmosphere shifting, transformative, kingdom of heaven centered love. And you might say, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. You've used some big sounding, beautiful sounding words. You told me a story that got my emotions flowing. Then you begin to use these beautiful, high sounding words. Beautiful people, arise. Well, who are these beautiful people, you might ask? And what is so beautiful about them? We'll talk hopefully about that. A potter's wheel? You mentioned a potter's wheel? I hear you saying, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm not sure I like what it might feel like to be taken in his hands and put on that wheel and then molded and shaped in ways that don't feel like what I thought my life was going to look like. Am I really going to be on a potter's wheel? Will he really make beauty arise from the mud on the potter's wheel? You also mentioned, you might say, vessels of Kedusha. What does that even mean? He wants us to be vessels of Kedusha. He wants us to be sources that can release flowing, pulsing energy of holiness. How would that look? What would it be? And finally, you said he wants us to be conduits of atmosphere shifting, transformative, and kingdom of heaven centered love. You might say, most people would say to me at this stage, you don't know me very well, do you? You don't know the people I live around very well, do you? You don't understand what life on earth in this, you don't know this very well, do you? That would be a usual way, a normal way of approaching what I have just said. And how Parsha Kedusha, Parsha Kedoshim, I should say, begins to awaken something in us that is indeed transcendent, beyond what we've ever known before. Now, in order to understand why I'm doing this at this stage, why the Torah has put these kinds of powerful statements and context involved at this particular time, we must understand the times and the seasons. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you should understand that there are certain seasons in time that the Holy One begins to awaken things in us. I will start with saying this is the sixth day of the second moon cycle of our biblical year. In the modern Hebrew, taken from some of the other languages of the earth, this month is referred to as Iyar. In English, it's I-Y-A-R. In Hebrew, it's Ayin Yod Resh, or Ayin Yod Yod Resh. It is deemed to be, by the sages, a kind of I forget what you call it when you have a word, anagram or something, where you take the first letter of each word and it forms another word. Each of a sentence, and it forms a letter or a word. Ani Yodevave Rofeeka. I am the Holy One, your healer. That comes from the story of the Mara narrative, happened this time of year. Also, you see in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 3, first there's a time to kill, but then there's a time to heal. Ani Yodevave Rofeeka. I am the Holy One, your healer. This is a time, seasons, and a time for healing. a time to get over the brokenness. This is why I told the story of the man and the woman who were at Auschwitz and had come forth and were rescued. A time to heal. In the physical creation, Iyar is a month of radiant beauty. Spring is in the northern hemisphere. Spring is bursting forth. Wheat is growing every day. Fruit is beginning to form and take shape on the branches of the fruit trees and the vines. All of it's taking in the sunshine, and even the human being is taking in the sunshine and beginning to store up the moisture and go through a season of rapid, daily, steady growth. That is the season we're in. It's also the season of counting the Omer, and we've reached week 4. This is the first day, actually, of the 4th week of counting the Omer, or setting aside the Omer, transforming the Omer. And the focus this week, usually by tradition, is Netzach in Hebrew, which means endurance, or tying to the eternal and connecting with the eternal, building endurance. And how do you build endurance? You build it, first of all, by focusing upon the vision, or the goal, the plan. Focusing intently upon the vision, the goal, and the plan, as opposed to the things going on around you at the moment. And secondly, you do it by initiating tactical disciplines, strategic disciplines that help you to face and overcome resistance and challenges, and prove your dedication in small things, and give you rewards for overcoming and developing steadfastness. So this is the season, this is a week. Parsha Kedoshim opens up a week that is designed for us to focus upon the vision and the goal that the Holy One has for us and for our world, and to initiate disciplines that will develop us to where we can mature to the point where we can begin to step into that destiny, those goals, those plans. And then the third thing, basically, that for those who follow Messiah Yeshua, is that this is the season of the 40 days of appearances. After the death and the burial and the resurrection of the Master in the year of his passion, he arose and he ascended, but before he ascended, for 40 days he appeared off and on to his disciples and to others, and at one point 500 it said. And now what did he do during these appearances? He began to prepare them. He began to do what we've just been talking about. He became their healer. I am the Holy One, your healer. He used it as a time to heal, a time of radiant beauty, development and growth, a time of fruitfulness, developing the basics of the fruit that was going to come forth. And he said things like, "Go therefore." And he said, "You are my witnesses." These are the concepts of this season that we're in. And as far as the other component of the times and seasons that we focus upon, which is the Torah cycle, yes, this is Parsha Kedoshim. This is 19 and 20, chapters 19 and 20 of Leviticus. 64 power-packed verses, inspiration, stunning challenges to our flesh, awakening cries to our spirit. These verses constitute the heart of the Torah in general, and the Kedusha discourse in particular. As we've been talking about, the Kedusha discourse, which lies at the center of Torah and is this heartbeat, is from Leviticus chapter 10, verse 8, through chapter 24, verse 9. And as you see, chapters 19 and 20 are right in the middle of that. And so this Parsha is at the heart of the Torah and of the Kedusha discourse. And it is ground zero for the section of Torah we call the weightier things of Torah. If you want to know what the weightier things of Torah is, this is the Parsha for you. Now, we need to start with understanding to whom the inspiring charge of Kedoshim, Parsha Kedoshim, is directed. The Holy One begins it by saying that he wants Moshe to speak to Kol Adat B'nai Israel. Kol Adat B'nai Israel. That's a very interesting phrase. The way he wants it to understand who he's talking to. It's not just the redeemed, that he has brought forth. He's not just the sons and daughters of Avram. It's not just the great nation. It's not the bride people, the Am Segilah. It's not an army. It's not a nation. Who is it that he's really addressing these particular words of beauty arise to? It's his Kol Edat B'nai Israel. Now, you might read in English, you're a congregation or an assembly. That's not what this is. that's a very Western viewpoint. What a Kol Adat. Adat comes from the word ed, which means testify or witness. And so Kol Adat B'nai Israel is the great witness cloud or the great witness throng of B'nai Israel. It focuses this. The attention is on what you are going to testify to, what your mission is going to be, and how you're going to engage the world, what your rules of engagement are for dealing with the nations and the world out there, and what are you a witness of, and how faithful a witness will you be? These are the questions of the Kedusha discourse. So we are, first and foremost, the witnesses. Yeshua used that terminology because he drew it from the Torah, and the Torah draws it from the voice and the heart of the Holy One himself. Our lives, beloved, our soon-to-be beautiful lives, are supposed to serve the world as unambiguous proof texts of the transformative power and the beauty of our King's love. Our lives are supposed to serve as the unambiguous proof text of the transformative power and the beauty of our King's love. Our lives are supposed to provide solid evidence of the wisdom and the superiority of our King's ways. That's supposed to be inherent in the way we live, in the way we present ourselves to human beings, the way we speak, the way we carry ourselves, the way we move, the way we live. The people of the world, you see, are supposed to be able to look at us and listen to us carry on conversations and watch us do business transactions and watch us handle relationships and go through challenges, even Holocaust level challenges, if God forbid, and be inspired as they watch us. Be inspired to think that they could be, even they could be, even they want to be like us. Because something has happened to us. Something has awakened in us. Something eternal, something spiritual, something beyond otherworldly is alive in us that is not alive in them. So, this is part of the tent maker's dream. I go through this season every year, beginning with Parsha Terumah in Exodus, talking about the tent maker's dream. What is the plan of the Holy One for indwelling human beings, for being in our midst, for exposing us to his presence? Tent maker's dream. He makes a tent where we can come visit him, and he lives in our tent. So the goal of this part of the tent maker's dream is to establish trust and trustworthiness in us as witnesses. He needs a reliable media platform from which his great love story for mankind and for creation can be told, and told believably to the world. The message is the ultimate good news. The message he wants to communicate to the world is the ultimate good news. It is peace on earth, shalom, aharetz, goodwill toward men. That's the message. The plan is for good. Beautiful people arise. That's the message. But if the people of the world do not have reason to trust the messenger, if they cannot see the beauty in the messenger, they will never believe or accept or walk in the message. And so we have to have a trustworthy platform. That is us. That is who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be Kol Edat B'nai Israel. We are supposed to be the witness throng, the witness cloud that makes a platform, a believable platform, to speak a believable message of the goodness of our King and his goodness of his plans for mankind. If you want to understand why I say, if people do not trust the messenger, they will never believe the message, all you have to do is ask the media today. They were formerly known as journalists. They no longer are believable. Therefore their message is not accepted. Ask politicians. They could say things like, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And immediately, all kinds of antennas come up, all sorts of guards come up because we know better. Then you could ask, more recently, pharmaceutical manufacturers and the scientists, as they call them in quotes, that they hire to spread their propaganda. We just don't listen anymore. We don't trust them anymore. We don't believe their messages, and so we don't buy their product. Ask a car salesman. That's been an old-fashioned one for a long time. Yes, they may have a good product, but we can't trust the messenger. Now, if he wants us to be trustworthy messengers, he's going to have to help us to arise, have the beauty in us arise. And so the theme of Sefer Vayikra in general, and the theme of Parsha Kedoshim in particular, is the call of the bridegroom king to his bride people, to us. And it says, be holy ones. Be holy, it says in most King James Bibles, because it doesn't differentiate between the singular and the plural. It's talking in the plural. Be holy ones. And I would define that briefly as traffickers in Kedusha energy. Be traffickers in Kedusha energy. And he continues, as I am Kadosh, as I am holy, the Holy One says. As I am, I might translate it as I am the central bank of Kedusha. Be traffickers in Kedusha, because I am the central bank of Kedusha. I release all the funds. I have all the assets. And so this week's sub-theme, based upon the idea of him calling us Kol Edat B'nai Israel, the whole of the witness throng of B'nai Israel, our sub-theme is just keep it simple. Keep it meaningful. Keep it believable. Keep it part of your experience, what you've actually seen and understand. And keep it very, very real. Well, shall we say our Baruch Hu? Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorah. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vayed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'Torah. Amen. Our King has called us to be his beautiful people. He wants us to be living testimonials to his transformative power. He wants us not to be some sort of ivory tower theologians that present an unmanageable, impossible dream to the world. He wants us to be godly husbands, godly wives, godly dads, godly moms, godly brothers and godly sisters, and godly kids and godly neighbors. He wants us to be joyful, shalom radiating, gentle, humble, and kind transcenders of tribulation, passing through troubles without being consumed by them, suffering the wounds, suffering the scars, like the couple of the story that we told at the beginning of this discussion, but overcoming and transcending. And that with joy, and that with shalom, and that with gentleness and humbleness, or humility and kindness. He wants us to be friendly and helpful neighbors, even if our neighbors aren't helpful and friendly. He wants us to be faithful servants and employees, or employers, or workers, even if those around us are not. He wants us to be trustworthy stewards of every sphere of influence he has assigned to us. He wants us to be honest businessmen and businesswomen. He wants us to pay our debts. He wants us to be responsible for our commitments. He wants us to be hospitable hosts where people want to come to our home or into our car or into our company. Because it's a pleasant, it's a safe environment, it's a good environment, it's a healing, helpful environment. He wants us to be hospitable hosts. He wants us to be patient and loyal and encouraging and inspiring friends, even to the friendless, even to the unfriendly. He wants us to be even honorable to our enemies or with our enemies, while they may still hate us because we can't stop them from hating us. While they may their hatred. Now, last week in Parsha Akari Mot, we kind of defined covenantal holiness because this is going to be the main theme of Parsha Kedoshim. And we learned that covenantal holiness means not some sort of external standard, but it means gravitating inwardly toward holy things, where our focus becomes more on the holy things, the things that God has said are holy and has infused his own holiness into, as opposed to looking and focusing on the things of the world and the negativity and the angst and the anguish and the emotions and the hormones and the things of this earth that keep us distracted from the holy things. Now, we must live in amongst all that process and that mess and not try to escape it because it's part of our calling. But in the midst of it, we must gravitate toward, focus our mind and attention on the holy things. So what are the holy things? Just by way of example, I'll give you a few. The Sabbath is the holy thing, is a holy thing. If we continue to focus on the Sabbath, we don't observe it and use it like some sort of a command that we do, that we feel like we've accomplished something spiritual for God. No, what we do is we absorb the energy of it. It's why we delight in the Sabbath. We rejoice in the Sabbath. The Moedim, the festivals as we know them, are the special days that the Holy One has set aside in Leviticus 23 and other portions of the Torah. The days that he said, I'm going to infuse with holiness. Touch that holiness and let that holiness infuse into you and come and be part of who you are. Gravitate toward these things and let that heal you of all the things the world does to you. Torah is the holy Torah. And this is why we study the Torah so deeply, because it is a source of Kedusha. It is a source of covenantal holiness. It builds in us this strength, this the ability to withstand, to overcome, to transcend. The Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit is called. He is the one who he comes into us and begins to heal the wounds and the scars and begin to empower us and inspire us and direct us. And the Mishkan, the holy tabernacle, as it's called, or the holy temple, Mikdash, these are the holy things. So we gravitate toward our focus on the holy city of Jerusalem. Why do we care so much about Israel, the holy land, and Jerusalem, the holy city, and Yeshua, Messiah, the holy King? Why do we focus upon them so much? Because their energy leaks into us and is radiated into us, and we begin to resonate with it, vibrate with it, and the frequency begins to heal us and restore us. So the idea of covenantal holiness is to gravitate toward and meditate on and think about the holy things, and then to carry their holiness, which involves wholeness, not just holiness, wholeness, harmony, hospitality, fruitfulness, and hope. And we absorb those things in the form of the Kedusha energy. We come forth and we begin to interact with the world in real ways, real people with real challenges, and we continue to hold on to the holiness, the wholeness, the harmony, the hospitality, and the hope. Now, last week the Holy One said to us in his words, according to the Maaseh, the makings, the doings, the ways of the land of Egypt, where you dwelt, you are not to asah, you're not to build it, you're not to make it, just like Egypt, you don't do what they did, and you don't do the things that the people of Canaan, where you're going to build. But you are to walk, he says, not in their ordinances, not in their ways, not in their paths or culturally accepted practices. But instead, he said last week, you are to do this. Asah, build your life upon my mishpatim, my judgments, as we said in English, my declarations of what's good for the ecosystem, what needs to happen going forward, in forward-looking vision, not on past-looking vision, not judgments as we think of in the English realm of being based on the past, focused on what we see, the evil that we see. No, mishpatim are based upon the future, what needs to happen to bring about the potential of creation and humanity and bloodlines of humanity. So you are to asah. This is the key. You are to asah my mishpatim, my judgments, And we just find that. And you are to shmar, treasure, cherish, carefully guard, and watch over to keep my ordinances. My culture, as the Holy One would say, my paths, my ways, my culturally accepted practices of the kingdom of heaven, the things that are happening in the courts of heaven, the four living creatures, the 24 elders, the cherubim, the seraphim, the songs of heaven, the casting of the crowns, this glorification of the Holy One, the declaration of holy, 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 the vision for seeing the whole earth filled with his glory. That is the energy of the holiness that comes from the mishpatim and the hukot, or the ordinances. He says, you are to live by them, to build on them, and you are to walk in them. I am the Holy One, your God. That was from Leviticus 18, 3-4. And then at the very end of last week's portion, at the very last portion, he gave a solemn charge to us to faithfully maintain the covenant protocols of Kedusha and this other thing called Tahora, which is staying toward holiness, working towards wholeness and holiness, not towards separation in the sense of being divisive, in the sense of being critical of other people. Tahora, staying pure and holy, from the standpoint of being positive life energy, future-focused, plan, mission-focused energy. And he said this, you are therefore, or you could say, I charge you therefore to keep my statutes and my judgments, my mishpatim. And do not, what you do not do is commit or engage with or build into your life any of these abominations, he said. To'ebot, Hebrew. Do not build into your life or allow to be in your structure any of these abominations, the structure of your life or your nation. Neither from you, nor from any of your nation, nor from any stranger who dwells within you. You need to be your brother's keeper in this regard. This brother's keeper concept of not allowing this stuff to corrupt and pollute the holiness of this witness throng. He says, whoever commits, builds into their life any of these abominations, their soul will be cut off. Their soul will be karat. Nefshot, those souls will be nafshot, will be karat from among their people. We'll talk about what that means. What does it mean to be karat, cut off? Well, karat is what happens to the anti-Kedoshim. The Kedoshim are the ones who absorb the Kedusha energy and then begin to radiate the Kedusha energy of the heavenlies into the world, into normal real time. Those who are the anti-Kedoshim are those who will not absorb the holiness, but instead reject the holiness infusion and instead take the infusion of the things of the world, the attitudes, the moods, the practices, the behaviors, the hate, the anger, the angst of the world, and begin to radiate that, resonate with that. Those are the anti-Kedoshim, and they get cut off. What happens? Karat means to cut off, literally, cut down. It's hard to be dogmatic exactly what karat means. You will see different people, some Christians, some Jewish, some Hebrew, some ancient, some newer, that have their ideas about what this means. To take it all with a grain of salt. Understand it's hard to be dogmatic about what karat means. I think it is deliberately, intentionally left vague as to what in a given situation karat will look like, the cutting off will look like. If you get the example, the first usage of the word karat, the verb karat in Torah, was in Genesis 9:11 in the context of the flood. And discussing the flood, the Holy One, after it's all over, says, never again will all flesh be karat by the waters of a flood. Now here's the idea. As the flood waters slowly came up, they began to isolate people who were at the higher grounds, the different hills. And so they began to slowly be cut off, and there was less and less ability to go back and forth and communicate. And so there's some level of ostracism going on here. Some level, cutting them off from contact, from comfort, from assistance. That means a person is karat. And it can go all the way up to drowning, to death, but that's may or may not be what's going on. Maimonides says that with karat, if you're karat, the soul is utterly distinguished. There is no chance at afterlife or resurrection. It's kind of like you're an animal. You revert back to the animal phase, like a cat or a dog or a cow will not live in the afterlife. So will it be, because the soul is utterly extinct. That's Maimonides' position. There are, of course, other positions in the Hebrew mindset. Nachmanides has a totally different view. The soul still lives, but it's not going to be allowed to enter the place it's assigned to, set aside, part for the Kedoshim. And so whether you talk about whether they don't belong among the nation of Israel, they don't have a chance to marry into the other tribes, they may not be able to serve in the army, they may not be serving any form of leadership, whatever, there's some level. We don't know exactly how in a given situation the karat will apply. But if we're going to be anti-Kedoshim, if we're not going to take up this cry to become beautiful people and let him define what that beauty looks like, then we will be anti-Kedoshim. And there will be a level of ostracism. We will not belong in all the levels and all the places. We will not have access to all the blessings of the Holy One. That is because he knows, for the sake of the ecosystem, for the sake of his grand plan, there must not be confusion. There must not be the wheat and the tare growing together in that context. And so there are different possibilities as to what karat may mean. I understand that. But there is some level of ostracism, disassociation going on. In Christianity, they take the phrase to mean excommunication from organized religion in that process. I'm not trying to tell you that's what it means. I'm trying to tell you that's the level of interpretation. You see the sphere or the threshold, the different types of continuums that you might find. Now, as we've said, Vakarimot says we're not to be like those people around us. Now, in Parsha Kedoshim, here's the basic outline. In chapter 19, verses 1 through 2, he's going to expound and declare that growth and progression in holiness in Kedusha is a covenant obligation. It's part of who we are. It's a part of the calling of Abraham. Remember, he initially called Abraham to go out for himself, and then he comes back later in chapter 15. After chapter 12 is where he called him out. Chapter 15, he says, now walk before me and be blameless. He begins to empower him with this idea of holiness. So growth, progression, and holiness is a covenant obligation. It is part of who we were born to be, redeemed to be, and called. So this is not something that's optional. This is something that we should be hungering for, because this is what we were born to do. Second thing, in verses 3 through 18 of chapter 19, then again in 30 through 36, it says Kedusha, foundational Kedusha has to do with your family, has to do with the father and mother that you were assigned to. And then the next thing has to do with Shabbat, the Sabbath day, understanding of Sabbath. And then the third thing is, the third part of the outline is, it's going to how you infuse the practice or the practicing of agriculture with Kedusha. Every aspect of our lives is supposed to be infused with the holy energy of heaven and the holy wisdom and the holy plan, the future-looking plan of heaven. So that's infusing the practice of agriculture with Kedusha. And then we have a whole section beginning in chapter 19, verse 20 through 22, and then in 29, a whole section, and then in chapter 20 we'll see a lot about it, taming the beast of the sexual appetite and desire, the flesh appetite, the flesh urge. And it can also go into the urges of food, or to eat, to drink, to have pleasure, to have any form of thrill-seeking, adventure, curiosity, satisfaction, the sensual appetites, taming the sensual appetites and desires through the infusion of Kedusha and the focus of Kedusha. And then we have the fifth aspect of the outline, that we're to take Kedusha and make sure it is put in the earth as a counteractive force to the occult. There is lots of occult. There's lots of witchcraft. There's lots of spell casting. There's lots of future fortune telling. There's lots of the negative, the deeper, darker wisdom of the earth, of the world and its people. And we, the Kedusha, the calling forth of the Kedoshim, is